If you're the parent of school-aged children, you were probably disappointed to hear this week that Australia has slipped down the global education rankings. According to the latest Trends in International Mathematics and Science study, our students are now behind pupils in Kazakhstan in maths and science. The Central Asian nation has a GDP income per person of just $14,000 compared to Australia's $73,000. Yet, since 2011, our schools have slid from 18th to 28th out of 49 countries in Year 4 maths, and from 12th to 17th out of 39 nations in Year 8 maths and science. So for our final late debate of the year, I was joined by Pete Goss, the Grattan Institute's School Education Program Director, Dr Jennifer Buckingham, Education Research Fellow at the Centre for Independent Studies, and scientist and author Ruben Meerman. Thank you all so much for coming in. Ruben, perhaps I could start with you. You've been teaching in classrooms for 20 years, and these latest results from the Trends in International Maths and Science report show us falling back in the pack. Have you noticed that in the classroom?
This is not new, actually. For 20 years, when I first got into going to schools, we had the Woolcott report, we've had reports and reports. There's been a crisis in science education and maths ever since I've been visiting schools. So I'm not, to be honest, all that surprised by this, but I would really like in the next 20 years to see it go the other way.
And how do we make it go the other way?
Oh, there's so many things we need to change. We need to obviously support our teachers. I don't think it's teachers' faults. I don't think it's even... There's no one alive today probably who's really responsible. We've got this system that's been around for a long time and it's just not working. I think assessment's a real killer because we take the world's most fascinating subject, science. It's the thing that kids really enjoy learning about. When you ask them, what do you want to learn about today? They'll say dinosaurs, rockets, space, volcanoes. They don't say, can we do fractions please, or some new words to spell? And yet we take this fascinating topic and turn it into the most boring subject in the curriculum. And, you know, that's got to change because the future is science.
Yeah, Pete Goss, I want to bring you in here because the thing that stood out for me in this report was that the number of kids who weren't meeting the benchmark, getting low or below, actually went up from Year 4 to Year 8. So the school system was making things worse. What's going on?
Once a kid falls behind in a core subject like maths or reading, then it's really hard to catch up. They have to move quicker if they're ever going to do that. But you're sitting in class, and if you don't get fractions at Year 4, then algebra, which you're starting to do at Year 8, makes no sense whatsoever. So it's not about back to basics, but we absolutely have to build strong foundations to help every kid to soar.
Yeah, so to get them to catch up if they're falling behind.
Well, you want to know that, and you know, I heard Ruben saying we don't want all these assessments and we need to be very careful. But teachers absolutely need to know where their students are at so they can help them learn what they need to learn next.
Jennifer Buckingham, I want to bring you in here because in that same report, a lot of the usual suspects were ahead of us, Japan, you know, Hong Kong, Singapore, but Kazakhstan was there as well. And there's not a lot of money in Kazakhstan. Their economy is a tenth the size of Australia. So is money not always the answer?
It's very difficult to know exactly what are the factors that are impacting on the success of the different countries. Money is certainly not a direct influence on a country's results. We see no really direct pattern in either the TIMSS results or the PISA results. The new data for that will be released next week. It's the same thing with teacher qualifications. It seems to make sense, it seems obvious that if a teacher is better qualified in science or in maths, then there'll be a higher level of performance, and there's no direct relationship there either.
There's a really interesting statistic that I was reading. 1/3 of Year 9 students were taught maths and 1/4 taught science by an out-of-field teacher. That's got to be worrying.
It is. Well, on the surface, that seems straightforward, that the more a teacher knows about the content, the more they've learnt about how to teach it, then the better they're going to be able to. But we can't work that out just by looking at qualifications or certifications. We need to know exactly what that teacher has learned in those courses as well.
I want to come back to the
Can I jump in on that one?
Yes, Pete.
When we look at the data, it's not about whether a teacher is a great mathematician, it's about whether they're a good teacher of mathematics. It's not about whether they love mathematics, it's whether they love love teaching mathematics. So putting the emphasis back on the teaching as opposed to the underlying content is an important distinction, and the best countries have made that and really focus on how do you teach each subject in the best way. That's something I don't think we've quite caught on to yet.
Ruben, this is right up your alley, enthusiasm for science. Are you seeing that in the classrooms where you go and visit? Are there specialist teachers? Should there be more?
That's a really good question, and I should say about the assessment, I'm talking about assessment in science there. I agree that mathematics, you need to know how well the kids are going. It's such a concept-based thing. But in science, well, look, I go to schools where they have specialist science teachers, and I've been, for instance, Windaroo State School up in Queensland. Rebecca Johnson's a teacher up there, won the Prime Minister's Prize for Science last year. Kids turn up early to be in those labs that they've built there. So that's working there, but there are other schools where wonderful things are happening as well, where they don't have a specialist science teacher. So the former principal of Windaroo, I spoke to recently, and he said, look, you know, there's not a cookie-cutter solution probably for science education, probably for any kind of school. But the disparities that I see, I get to more than 100 schools a year, and it's just amazing the range of facilities that they do and do not have. So this funding business, I'm not a policy person, I don't really know the solution here, but clearly we've got to fix it.
I want to talk about funding, but just before we leave the topic of teachers, Jennifer, I know that you've written about the number and the quality of teachers. What's the problem there?
The problem is to do with initial teacher education partly, but also to do with professional learning. And there seems to, we have to be really careful not to chase engagement and fun in science and maths without thinking then also about the content that's being learned, because there's a chicken and egg kind of situation there, that engagement and enjoyment comes with success and with learning and with understanding, not so much the other way around. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
Yeah, but you're also saying that we're churning out a hell of a lot of teachers, but perhaps not from the highest entry scores.
There's a mismatch with supply and demand. So we are training a lot of teachers and educating a lot of teachers to go into jobs that don't exist for them. And yet we have gaps in the teaching workforce that aren't being filled, particularly for maths and science teachers.
Would you support like raising the entry criteria and like the OP level or the ATAR level for Year 12 students to get into education degree courses?
I'm in favour of the sorts of reforms that are being put in place at the moment in Victoria and in New South Wales particularly. I think there is a certain level of academic ability.
Quickly for our viewers, what are those reforms?
So Victoria has proposed that there be an ATAR cut-off of about 70, depending on the way that teachers are going into university, but that's the suggested ATAR. And in New South Wales, they have put in place a requirement that teachers have at least a Band 5 performance in English and 2 other subjects.
Right, okay. Well, I guess you can't just talk about teachers and you talk about funding as you guys were talking earlier. Pete Goss, this is something you've focused on only in the last few days.
Yes.
Essentially, you're increasing funding overall was the Gonski model, but you're saying that there's a way that in this low inflation world, we can make that work better. How's that?
There's broad agreement that we need to send money to the places that need it most, that it costs more to educate disadvantaged students, but we need to make sure that they get great outcomes as well. The problem with Gonski, well, the principles are fantastic, but in practice there have been a lot of quirks and a lot of deals done, but it would cost about $3.5 billion if nothing else changed to lift all schools up to the amount of money that they need, and we don't have that money at the moment as a nation. But right at this time, in 2016, we're in a world where wages growth is very low. And when wages are growing slowly, the high amount of money that we plan to spend goes much further.
Yes, so you're saying that, yeah, the indexation of the funding's like this, but wages growth is like this, so there's this money in the forward estimates that what you're saying you could reallocate in another way.
Absolutely, and we would reallocate it in 3 ways. The first way is to help the Commonwealth match its budget in 2016 so that it doesn't have to spend more money. The second way is to make sure that all schools get lifted up to the amount of money that they actually need, and in some states, that's government schools need more, but in the Northern Territory, it's the Catholic schools. And the third thing we're proposing is a real investment in teacher quality to address exactly the sorts of things we were talking about earlier, to have expert teachers in every school teaching the other teachers what is the best way to teach fractions or reading, or what are some of those fantastic ways that Ruben was talking about. Once someone's figured them out, let's share those ideas around.
Ruben, one of the big problems here is the appetite for maths among students. I mean, in 2013, less than 10% studied advanced maths in Year 12. How do we make kids get more interested in maths?
Well, let's show them what it's for, because when I ask kids in primary schools who loves maths, and I'm not kidding here, half the hands go up. Then I ask them, which of you kids knows how your iPhone or your smartphone knows how that you've turned it? So, you know, you turn your smartphone and the screen changes. Kids don't know how that works. Now, that's a mathematical thing going on in the background. It's sure there's a bit of physics, there's some sensors and stuff. That we're not teaching them how maths makes the modern world work. And when you explain to a little kid, hey, you know, when you're playing your game and you're driving your car, that's all beautiful mathematics in the background. We won't learn it until Year 12. It's called quaternions, and there's all sorts of stuff. They don't even teach that in high school. But if you teach them what it's for, great. Now get this. I was in a high school, a very well-to-do private school here in Sydney recently. Great teacher, very passionate. When I said, I'm going to show you why complex numbers are so important in quantum mechanics, you can't build a laser without complex numbers, he said, really? And I nearly fell off my chair that he didn't know, while he's teaching complex numbers, he doesn't know what they're used for.
Right, so a bit more application. All right, well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Always a fascinating topic. But Ruben, Jennifer and Pete, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.